Principles of Urban Regional Planning and Development, a tool for multidisciplinary integration and stakeholders coordination. Written by Alemseghed Ghebrekidan, an urban planner and assistant professor at the University of Juba. Published in the year 2018. Preface. Urban and regional planning is a discipline in its own rights like any other academic discipline. The perception and attitude that urban and regional planning is part of engineering discipline is misleading. Urban and regional planning is a broad interdisciplinary field which emphasizes breadth over depth with background for all areas of planning. In most urbanization processes, it can be observed that urban fabrics are characterized by sprawl, acute shortage of basic infrastructure and services. This is mainly due to non-compliance with necessary requirements during planning, preparation, and implementation, as well as absence of multidisciplinary approach and stakeholders' involvement. Although there have been notable efforts to address these urban planning shortcomings, these core issues have remained unresolved. As such, this booklet is an attempt to highlight these issues, promote the debate on the issues, and find solutions. The aim of this booklet is to reach out to and be accessible to all stakeholders and to enable them to get better understanding of urban and regional planning. This should make it easier to implement and develop plan document on the ground to ensure balanced development with clear socioeconomic benefits. Furthermore, it is to enable stakeholders to familiarize themselves with the requirements for the preparation for urban and regional planning and implementation, as well as to equip them with necessary techniques and methods. This booklet should help as a reference for urban and regional planning. It is to prepare and drive all stakeholders in their planning preparation, implementations, as well as development. All these have to be guided by multidisciplinary interventions. The vast array of beneficiaries means that the booklet has to be written in this form, pictorially illustrated, and in simple English for all to be able to understand and benefit from. The booklet is organized as follows. It starts with the definition of key terminologies used. It then looks at the current trends in urbanization, the bottlenecks of development before looking at the opportunities and prospects. These are followed by development planning tools, the maps, the plans and descriptive devices, urban and regional integration models. This booklet or documentary is prepared to reflect on my professional input for betterment of quality of life and integration. This documentary could be considered as a preliminary or introduction of urban regional planning and development just for the sake of multidisciplinary integration and stakeholders coordination. It is my intention to contribute what I'm experiencing and wishing to realize through my professional capacity. Therefore, most information are collected and referred with my specific work areas from various sources such as projects, literature, practices, internet, publications, journals, and others. Hence, these could be referred in my specific work area mainly in Eritrea as well as in Ethiopia and South Sudan. This documentary covers the entire 71 pages of the booklet. The documentary also serves as an audio-visual guideline for the booklet. Chapter 1. Introduction to Urban and Regional Planning. Introduction. There are various definitions of urban and regional planning. What we refer to as urban and regional planning in this booklet may also go with other names: regional planning, town or city planning, or rural planning. Whatever it is called, the aim is simple: guidance on orderly land use and management in urban, rural, and regional environments, which should be sustainable. Urbanization affects all of us in a number of ways. Culturally, the urban arises out of people coming or migrating from the rural. These desperate individuals come with their own cultures and cultural baggage. The urban become a melting pot of these diverse cultures, Economically, these individuals may be pulled together by economic forces, and as they settle, they also attract further economic activities, creating commercial centers and others. Identity-wise, the end result is the development, among others, of the new urban identity. This means that urbanization has to be controlled. If it's not controlled, urbanization may create conflict and become a burden for rural areas and the nation at large. It is the purpose of the urban planning to avoid this. Lessons learned from God. Urban planning can be exemplified to the work of God, where in Genesis chapter 1 verse 3 to 5 it says, Day 1 God created light and time. Day 2 skies and waters. Day 3 dry ground, water bodies and plants. Day 4 the sun, the moon, the stars and the planets. Day 5 the fish and the birds. Day 6 land, animals and humans. And on the seventh day God rested from his work. The perfect planner, God. The perfect planner has given us the perfect template when he created the universe. God created the universe in a logical sequence in 6 days. Fish and birds, for example, did not come before the sky and waters, which would have been ironic where to put them. God had a logic sequence to the way he planned and executed his plans. At the heart of the planning is an integrated approach and sustainability. God created the universe to cater for various creatures who dwelt on it. On our part, this calls for inclusivity, the involvement of all sectors and actors in the planning and execution stages. Our task is therefore to work around and not against these templates, God's creation or what we call nature. For efficient and effective planning, we need to borrow from this perfect template and understand that world as we know it did not come into being by accident. It is a result of well-planned design. It is therefore important that before we interfere with the nature, we need to be aware of how things came into being and why things are where they are today. We need to follow the logical sequence in planning. The purpose of planning. Why do we need to plan? The aim of urban and regional planning should be to maximize land use efficiently, to develop integrated approach to sustainable urban and regional development, to ensure connectivity in terms of infrastructure and services, to encourage the development of an integrated national urban policy. What are the outcomes of the planning? The outcomes of urban regional planning are efficient utilization of resources, harmonization of urbanization and urbanism, balanced densification, which is equated to minimum 300 persons per hectare. Definition of key terms. Urbanization. Urbanization is a physical arrangement of all settlement structures referred to geographical area combining urban and parts of rural areas. Transformation of an individual locality from less to a more urban. Urbanism is defined as a typical way of life of people who live in a city, town or urban area. The geographical, economic, historical, cultural and social factors that give rise to urbanism differs from one area to another. That is why urbanization and urbanism are complex concepts to be defined. Each urban area is unique. This booklet therefore defines urbanization as a physical arrangement of settlement areas, which includes how a locality may be transformed from less to a more urban. Urbanism, on the other hand, refers to the way of life of the city or town dwellers. While it is true that urban and rural depend on each other, the practice today is of the urban invading, exploiting and occupying the rural. These trends diminishes the significance of the rural area. For all, the urban and the rural, to be on the side of urbanization, we need to move away from that exploitative model. Urban-rural linkages is a visible and invisible flows of people, capital, goods, information and technology between urban and rural areas. A region is an area or a division, part of a country or a world having a definable characteristic but not always fixed boundaries. An administrative district of a city or a country, an area considered as a unit for geographical, functional, social or cultural reasons. Regional planning is a category of planning and development that deals with designing and placing infrastructure and other elements across a large area. Regional planning zones may encompass several towns, cities, or even parts of different states. Urban and regional planning. Urban and regional planning is a unified development of towns, cities, regions, and their environs. For most of its history, planning dealt primarily with the regulation of land use and the physical arrangement of the settlement structures as guided by multidisciplinary intervention and land development criteria. This brings coordination among all sectors and actors. Urban regional planning, the unified development of towns and regions, is about formulating regulations on land use, the physical arrangement of settlement structures, and land development. All these have to be guided by a multidisciplinary approach, which is geographers, economists, agriculturists, socialists, health professionals, engineers, education professionals, architects, lobby groups, environmentalists, community leaders, and other relevant professionals and stakeholders. Settlement hierarchy. Portrayed in this pyramid-shaped form, settlement hierarchy can be defined in terms of city, regional center, large-sized town, medium-sized town, and small-sized town, all the way to village and hamlet. As you can see in the diagram, the upper part, which consists of city all the way down to small-sized town, are considered to be urban, while from village to hamlet are considered to be rural. And also the population capacity increases at the urban level and decreases at the rural level. While there are different types of settled environment which the urban regional development process has to consider, there is no common criteria for determining what constitutes, for example, a small-sized city or a medium-sized town. Each country uses its own criteria for determining what constitutes a village or a hamlet. Generally, this has to be based on settlement size, population, and service type. The two broad categories of the settled environments are urban, which ranges from a small-sized town to a city level, and rural, which is made up of hamlet and villages. Nation is composed of people, land, and government. These three makes people and land under single government. In every nation, there has to be an authority that takes charge of urban regional planning. The nation may be defined as people and land under a single government. The government is mandated with the distribution of scarce resources of a given society in a fair and equitable way without compromising the future generation. It is not only resources that are generated from the land, but all housing infrastructure implementation are laid on the land. We therefore need to be sensitive on utilization of the land because it is one of the three key elements of the nation, as nation is formed of people, land, and government. Why do we need to plan? What are the outcomes of planning? Elements of living nature. You have tangible, which represents intangible, and intangible, which represents values, and values, which once again represents tangible. Intangible, you have things like physical heritage and nature. Intangible, you have culture, literature, and events, while in values, you have abstracts and norms. This creates the identity, and the identity of the urban people is reflected once these elements of living nature are put together. Urban identity can be defined as the intuition of the user concerning the unique appearance of the urban areas, which unifies social, cultural, economic, environmental, and territorial functioning of urban spatial values in urban space. All settled areas have their specific identities made up of the tangible, intangible, and values of the settler community. These are assets. The combination of the tangible, the intangible, and the values constitute identity. These are referred to as elements of living nature. The intangible elements, which include culture, literature, and knowledge, are what creates the built environment. Every city or town is a reflection of the identity of its dwellers. Geography, which also deals with human geography. Geography can be defined as a science that deals with distribution and arrangement of all elements of the Earth's surface. One of the main allies of urban regional planning is geography. It provides the planning process with all the information on the resources both below and above the Earth's surface. Geographical maps informs or influences all the other bases of map to be developed. Overview of urbanization. Urbanization can be seen into three forms. Urbanization process could be expressed as ancient, medieval, and modern. Urbanization can also be exemplified or equated to the body structure of a human being, where you have the body structure which is equal to urban structure. Also, you have the body system which is equivalent to urban system. All the urban structures and systems should be well integrated in a coordinated manner like human body structures, systems, and organs. Urban areas are like people who have the capacity to take care of themselves, generate their own income, manage themselves and other people under them, and need not to depend on others. No urban area should depend on external sources for funds or financial support. They need to be self-sufficient. There is an analogy that can be made between a human body and that of urban fabric. In this case, the bones in the body structure can be equated to the roads in the urban structure. The arteries and veins can also be equated to water lines, while urine can be equated to sewage or drainage, the waste product to that of garbage. The nervous system can be exemplified to electricity in the urban area. The brain and the heart can also be equated to the government functioning system, while the lung, the liver, the intestines are comparable to the line ministries or organization. When all these systems and structures are functioning well, the human being is said to be healthy, and the real image of the human being is reflected. Similarly, when all these systems and structures are functioning well, and the urban fabric is well set and functioning, the real urban image appears as visible and prosperous. Chapter 2. Trends in Urbanization. Introduction. Modern urbanization in most developing countries started in the 19th century with the advent of colonialism. The process was characterized by the destabilizing the states, and the planning exercise focused chiefly on the physical planning. This led to what is commonly referred to as the dormitory type of settlement, lacking the necessary economic clarity. The result was rampant development, causing a condition of a sprawl and imbalance urban demand and supply. Today, the focus is shifting to restructuring and facilitating as well as implementing infrastructures. Urbanization is a complex process with multiple and varied causes and effects, which cannot be encapsulated into a singular definition. The process can become highly unsustainable without immense planning and management. Issues regarding urbanization. Scenarios on urbanization and urbanism. You have causes, which includes economic change. Any area that becomes urban witnesses economic changes from feudal agrarian to a mechanized or industrial and mercantile to financial economy. Cultural change. Any area that becomes urban has to evolve from a low and isolated cultural to a higher exchange cultural characterized by higher consumption. Administrative change. Any area that becomes urban is usually transformed from being hinterland periphery to centers of administration. And you have the effects, which includes population. Settlements experience a rapid increase in population and density due to increased opportunities and higher consumption patterns. Infrastructure. Urban areas get generally a concentration of social facilities along with centralized high-end transportation and other physical infrastructure. Consumption and sprawl. Consumption in urban areas are higher due to higher population and expansive infrastructure generated by cultural changes dependent on sophisticated division of labor. Consumption and expansions in urban areas are higher due to higher population. A number of towns shows condition of sprawl and expansions. Hence, urbanization is a complex process with multiple and varied causes and effects, which cannot be encapsulated into a singular definition. However, the process remains highly unsustainable and requires immense planning and management. Population density. For optimal urban service delivery, the preferred population should be a minimum of 300 persons per hectare. The total population divided by the total urban territory should have a minimum of 300 persons per hectare. This will help in preventing the effect of a sprawl and fair distribution of urban fabric. This densification is necessary in urban planning as it ensures the proper utilization of infrastructures. The principle of 300 persons per hectare do not include environmentally sensitive areas like large swamp area, urban forestry and huge infrastructural and urban agro-industrial areas usually located in suburb areas as well as airports and etc. The derivation according to research findings of Alemseghed Ghebrekidan in this book, the recommended population density is about 300 persons per hectare. Chapter 3. Development Bottlenecks. Common urban problems. Bottlenecks impeding well-functioning of urban-rural development. Obstacles. Lack of data bank and information dissemination. Lack of educational institute on urban regional planning. Deficiencies in infrastructure. Weakness municipal duty and lack of urban and regional planners. Lack of financial resources. Lack of city marketing strategy, obsolete norms, absence of clear awareness on resource mobilization and land utilization, uncertainties in context, unwarranted modifications and extensions, incorrect understanding on urban and regional planning that is connecting directly only with engineering. Effects. Constraints in local development and negative impacts on urban-rural structure, creating unfulfilled needs and demands. Reduction of the aggregated productivity of economy. Effects on major economic performances. Disregard advantages. 1. You have understanding of urban and rural. 2. Understanding of shift of paradigm of urban-rural. 3. The rationale of urban and rural development, and 4. Exploiting and adapting an experience of rural area. The bottlenecks impeding the well-functioning of the urban regional development can be explained in terms of obstacles and effects. There are serious consequences for development where there has been improper urban planning. Some of these includes focus on expansion of physical planning only. Any expansion should be guided by a clear socio-economic objective and multidisciplinary intervention. Lack of centralized city market strategy. There should be a database that disseminates information on available services within the city and their locations. Unwarranted modification and extensions. All modifications and extensions should be implemented according to the approved standard, technical requirement, and respect for public realm. Abandoning local skills and products. All efforts should be made to source local materials and product. Identify problems. Urban fabric is mirrored by unclear land and other natural resource utilization with lack of basic socio-economic clarity, thus identifying 3 major problems. 1. Lack of development planning, such as planning perspective and planning aspects. 2. High dependency on existing core towns for services and economic activities. 3. Lack of attention on local products, skills, dependency on imported materials, warranted mode of construction, so that the cost of construction for housing and infrastructure is high. Most cities are plagued by the following problems. A. Lack of developmental planning. This is characterized by rampant land distribution without fulfilling basic development principles such as planning perspective, regulatory bodies or central government agencies, implementers, which is the states, facilitators, which is financial institutions and suppliers. B. Producers, end users, which is the consumer, and the planning aspect, which is the socio-economic and cultural environmental territory. C. High dependency on existing core towns. Most urban extensions phenomena continue to depend on the existing core instead of creating their own centers for economic and social activities. D. Lack of attention to local skills and products. Labor and materials are the main issues in the process of urbanization and urbanism. In the context of urban identity, the labor market and the product in the local level must be encouraged. As a result of both local skills and products are not improved because of the dependency on external labor force and product. One of the key problems with the urbanization process is lack of coordination between the involved stakeholders. This leads to a lack of awareness on essence of urban and regional planning, as well as unfriendly urban environments. Land use issues: urban land, rural land, pressure of growing urban land and reducing rural land. Internal growth pressure, external demand for urban growth, pressure on natural resources like water bodies to serve the city, environmental pressure and climate change, environmental pressure for solid and liquid waste disposal, pressure of creating facilities, special zones like industries and etc., pressure from local people. Urban expansion caused by internal forces and external pressure. Internal forces and external pressure lacks substantial effort to integrate urban-rural economy, horizontal expansion, centralize infrastructure, encourages horizontal expansion, thus sprawl will happen. One of the negative impacts of sprawl. Consider a person living and renting where basic services and facilities are available. The person then gets a piece of land to build his own house using money that he either acquired on his own or through a bank loan about 5 kilometers away from where he is. This new settlement, however, does not have the basic facilities and services, including the physical and social infrastructure found in the old area. Since this new environment is not friendly as it lacks basic amenities, this family, including the kids and other dependents, are as a result forced to come back to where they were initially. This adds additional expenses in terms of transport, consumables like shoes, clothes, foods, and etc. The economy of the family becomes destabilized, impacting negatively on the collective society. The burden falls on the immediate target group until the city center administration and the country as a whole takes a stock. They will continue to produce less visionary generation who will always be duplicating problems instead of harnessing opportunities. It is also important to note that sprawl encourages crime, imbalances of socio-cultural makeup of society, destroys environment while putting high demand on infrastructure. In this connection, in terms of sprawl, it is wise decision taken by Eritrean government after observing a boom in housing and land distribution and how keeping up with the provision of basic facilities are becoming a serious challenge in all urban centers and in some rural areas. The government discouraged these types of moves. It suspended all rampant land distributions and voluntary expansion. Instead, it established Eritrean Mapping and Information Center, EMIC, to have a complete mapping for all centers. This happened about 13 years ago. The intention was to prepare and integrate the plan in all levels of administrative centers. Furthermore, the government extended the previous development, a revision, and the reuse of new management system of housing and non-housing properties. It further introduced rental rates and management of housing and building stocks by zones and type of status. To the reverse, this kind of overcrowdedness is not recommended. Urban expansion or growth is a reality we have to live with. We, however, need to manage all directions by the consent of all stakeholders so that growth is controlled and managed. If we do not, we may end up encouraging urban sprawl, unnecessary expansion of the city, which is the cancer of the city. The need for land for investment or housing should be properly studied and delivered in accordance with the development plans. These will control random urban expansion caused by internal forces and external pressures. You have to note that reducing rural land and green areas may negatively impact the environment as well as urban breathing areas. Lessons from South Sudan and Eritrea in rural settlement and land management. Lessons from South Sudan rural settlement and management. A. Settlement patterns among South Sudanese communities vary according to their livelihood styles. B. Among the pastoralists, the settlement patterns are dictated by seasonal patterns. They construct temporary shelters where these houses are in flood plains. They are elevated to keep the water out. C. Farming communities, on the other hand, build more permanent shelters, mostly around their farms. D. In all cases, materials are sourced locally and the shelters built are environmentally friendly. E. Land ownership is based on ancestral rights. Any land disputes are settled by the chiefs and the community elders. F. People live in close-knit communities. G. Areas designated for various activities such as livestock are respected, and etc. Lessons learned from Eritrea rural settlement and management. A. All settlements in rural areas respect agricultural and fertile lands by having houses built on marginal lands only. When a given marginal land is fully occupied, a search is made for a new one without encroaching into agricultural land. B. On an average, the size of plot allotment for a house, including the outside yard and any animal shed, chicken pen or compound space, is contained within a range of 250 square meters to 300 square meters. C. On average, a row of allotment area for settlement is no more than 4 to 6 attached plots. D. The roads average about 8 meters in width, large enough for animal-driven carts or oxen plows to pass or overtake each other is left. E. For drainage ways, consider the slope inclination before the plots are allocated. F. Plot allotments take into consideration slopes inclination for drainage, wind direction, and sun orientation. G. Open spaces have been left for cultural and social events. H. The raw materials for building houses are sourced locally, following the directives of the community council on where to get the materials. One cannot decide on their own where to get the materials from. I. No individual is allowed to cut any tree in their compound or surrounding without permission from the community council. For each tree cut, 5 are planted in its place. J. Animal habitats, passages, and water points are not tampered with. K. A traveler passing through a village gets down their donkey or mule, tells the village where they are planning to go, where they are from, and the village gets to assign somebody to accompany them to where they are going. L. It is prohibited for any individual to extend their piece of land without the knowledge or approval of the community council or religious elders. The penalty for non-compliance include total isolation from socio-cultural activities of the community. The same punishment applies to anyone who sides with them. All urban settlement starts as babies who need support at the early stage of their life. But as they grow and mature, the need for support should become less and less, with each standing on its own. Where an urban area is not capable of managing its own programs and have control of its own goals, it becomes dependent on other settlements. It is better not to have that kind of urban area. Chapter 4. Opportunities and Prospects. Introduction. The relationship between the urban and the rural is such that the urban depends on the rural for labor and resources, while the rural depend on the urban for major services, as the urban often has monopoly of services to disadvantage of the rural. The urban is also always expanding in the expense of the rural, creating in the process a greater urban region. When such an expansion happens, a lot of pressure is exerted on the rural to not only concede land, but also supply labor for rendering the much needed services. The rural usually finds itself forced to serve and depend on the urban. The significance of the rural is diminished in the process. Comparison of development in urban and rural areas. In this figure, you see the image of a town of Mendefra in Eritrea and a village of Zabanuna, also in Eritrea. The two places are located at a distance of less than 2 kilometers apart from each other. The basic aspects and perspective is not fulfilled in Mendefra as required. While compared to Zabanuna village, the villagers have arranged their village in a normal manner in such a way that their houses are far apart from each other with sufficient space for breathing ground, for recreation ground, and the roads are open in a way that would allow their cows, their oxen plows, and their animal-driven carts to move freely in a manner of even interchanging in a road to allow them to move and overtake each other. The infrastructure in Zabanuna village allows even cars to move freely within the village. In the context of planning perspective and aspects, Zabanuna appears much better than Mendefra. This shows that some villages seem to be more organized than some towns due to lack of planning. This is a message to urban actors that you need to invest in planning your urban areas to avoid such issues of sprawl and overcrowdedness. And as the saying has it here in Eritrean language, which says, Ketema airhaka, ketema aikarbaka, which means in English, neither be near to a city nor be far from it, a saying from Eritrean peasants. The urban should respect the interest of the rural by controlling unnecessary horizontal expansion as it invades rural land. The application of 300 persons per hectare population density should help in avoiding this kind of conflict. The rural may only start to appreciate urban growth when the urban starts to respect the rural interest. Condition of greater region showing urban-rural relationship. Urban-rural relations in Eritrea. Scenario on Eritrean urban-rural linkages. The existence of greater urban region not only includes the core urban areas but also highly rural areas around them, while the gap between urban and rural dwellers are nominal. The relations between the urban and the rural is based on the dependence of each other. While the urban depends on rural resources including labor, the rural depends on the urban for services and amenities. The idea of greater urban region is further strengthened by the urban demands, interest, service, and etc., which creates a very high demand of resources from the neighboring rural areas. Hence, there is a need to consider the boundary of strategic activities extending from the urban core up to the greater influential rural areas. There is a need to reconsider the boundary of strategic activities and planning horizon, which extend from the urban core to the greater influential rural areas. It's important that we continue to be aware of these three scenarios of urban-rural relations, that is, understanding of urban-rural, attitude on mobilization of resources, and understanding the shift in paradigm, that is, searching efficiencies in urban-rural forms and functions, and the rationale of urban-rural development, that is, potential of current structures and possibility of improvement. And this is the key opportunity and paradigm which focuses on rural-based development. Chapter 5. Development Planning Tools. Introduction. Planning is a tool for improving quality of life through the provision of resources such as electricity, water, telecommunication, roads, transportation, sanitation, health, education, facilities, amenities, security, justice, environment, and etc. To realize this, vision and plan are the key factors in providing for facilitating resources. The starting point is the development of the concept, defining the vision and extending the plan. Demand, actors, and agencies. The role of urban planning is to meet the demands put upon it by the various actors and agencies. These demands are centered around the development of the built environment. This includes the management of basic infrastructure and services. Urban and regional planning. Understanding of urban and rural. Attitude on mobilization of resources. Understanding the shift in paradigm. Searching efficiencies in urban-rural forms and functions. The rationale of urban-rural development. The potential of current structure and possibilities of improvement. Focus on rural-based development. The key opportunity and paradigm here is to focus on rural-based development. The key tool for urban planning are maps, plans, and descriptive devices. These are used for identifying strategies for developing and executing programs and projects which should adopt integrated approach and should involve all sectors and actors. Basic principles for development planning. Basic principles for development planning is strategy, perspective, and aspects. Perspective, you have government, state, financial institutions, producers, and consumers, while in aspect you have social, economic, cultural, environmental, and territorial. All these are interconnected and work together. How do we understand these? A platform for containing, conserving, coordinating, promoting resources and programs. Urban and regional planning. The maps, the plans, and the descriptive devices, mechanisms, trends in urbanization. Perspectives. The platform used to integrate perspective and aspect consists of three main tools, that is maps, plans, and descriptive devices. These three tools, which are used to realize any development plan or strategies, operate at a various level of perspective as follows. The main task of the central government as a regulatory agency is to make the necessary governance rules and regulations. The state are the implementing bodies of the regulations. Their task is to ensure that all the regulations passed by the central government are implemented. They are also mandated to adjust or harmonize the regulations given by the central government in accordance to their state aspects. The task of financial institution is facilitation, monitoring and controlling of financial circulation, and etc. The producers provide the products needed for urban consumption. They deal with supply side of the equation. The consumers, who are the chief beneficiary in this process of urban regional development, are the end users. They represent the demand side of the equation. Aspects. The social interactions and social geography within the built environment are major concerns in terms of urbanism. Therefore, social values must be considered in every single step of urbanization process. The improvement of quality of life depends on the economic development of the urban area in particular and in the nation in general. The economic development factors should not affect the socio-cultural diversities, so that the economic aspects must address the need and the demand of society in all dimensions. Culture is one of the main binding agents of society, and at the same time it is an intangible element of the urban identity. Culture plays an invaluable part in urbanization process in terms of work disciplines, so that the built environments reflects the values and cultures. The physical urban fabric is determined by its own environment equality. Environment is the connecting of the living, working, recreation activities, etc. To have healthier activities, the physical environment arrangement and setup of the infrastructure and landscaping should motivate the socio-economic sectors. The land is designed with its own natural features. Any urban planning and development activity should work with the natural features, not against it. The requirement of land use should consider territorial aspects of areas of interest and their surrounding for the application of integrated planning approach. Component of urban and regional planning. 1 is strategic vision, 2 database system, 3 maps, plans, and descriptive devices. The primary stage of urban regional planning is to first identify the strategic vision, then develop a database system with the hard and soft data. This should be followed by the map, which gives all the information needed as basis for the assessment of the situation. The base map, which is the hard data, and all the statistical information, which is the soft data, should form the main turning point in establishing the plan. The plan has to be developed with the consent of all stakeholders and should reflect the opinions and attitudes of all the multidisciplinary actors and sectors. Any plan prepared must be transparent with the details of all the programs and projects for the coordination and integration of all sectors and actors. Vision and plan. What are the concepts in vision and plan? From providing resources to facilitating resources. What we need: urban and regional planning for development and integration. If we do not plan, we are planning to die, a saying from Sweden. The planning tools, maps, plans, and descriptive devices are identifying a set of strategies for developing and executing programs and projects through integrated efforts from all sectors and all actors. and divide them into institutional environment, legislative environment, and financial environment. Controlling financial circulations. These will give you an enabling environment. Enabling environment. The enabling environment responds to the questions of what needs to be done, how it should be done, and how to generate own income. The enabling environment consists of legislative environment. This answers the question of how do we do it and the regulation governing what is allowed and what is not allowed. Financial environment. This is about how much program would cost and where the money would come from. Institutional environment. This consists of tasks and scopes of all sectors and actors to integrate how do we organize ourselves and who will do what. Interventions and imbalances of stakeholders. You have rumors, irresponsibility, informal leaders. Stakeholders, professionals, entrepreneurs, sectors, trends, awareness, actors, lobby group, professionals. In utilization, conservation and development, you have the center of interest of conflict, which is between utilization, conservation and development. And this leads to an internal force. This internal force is a wrangle between the rumors, the irresponsible leaders and informal leaders. To narrow the gap of difference or to avoid the center of conflict, you have to extend awareness, responsibility and accountability. This ensures a strengthening of internal force. An improper process of containing, conserving, promoting, and coordinating resources and program can lead to an obvious conflict of interest. To avoid and overcome such scenarios, all development planning strategies should be guided by inclusivity of all stakeholders and multidisciplinary approach. In addition, these internal forces can be strengthened by capacity building and assuring responsibilities, awareness, and accountability. If these strategies fail to meet the socio-economic objectives, it can open chance for external pressure, that is irresponsibility, informal leaders, and rumors. Comprehensive plan. In comprehensive plan, you need to be asking yourself a question like, what do we do? And you answer it with 1, a strengthening of regional linkages, 2, land use plan, and 3, physical and social infrastructure plan. Then you ask what is necessary. You answer it by institutional and financial strategies and legislative mechanisms. In comprehensive plan, you should also be asking yourself how to do it, and these will give you methods of implementation. The components of the comprehensive plan will be then broken down into projects and programs and will be programmed as follows: long-term integrated plan, medium-term strategic plan, and short-term action plan. This is a summary of the key steps needed in urban planning and development and how to achieve them. The comprehensive plan consists of a strengthening of regional linkages, land use plan, physical and social infrastructure plan, institutional and financial strategies, legislative mechanisms. Organizational setup or a structure for preparation of urban and regional planning. You have authorized body, which is equivalent to the parliament or the executive. The executive body, which can also be equivalent to the host ministry of the project. The planning coordinators, which is the same as urban and regional planners. And states, line ministries, sectors and actors. Development of database system, development of maps, plans and reports, processing of updating information. The system of flow of information in this case begins from authorized body to executive body to planning coordinator to line ministries, and the information flows back to the processing and updating of information, development of database system and development of maps, plans and reports, back to planning coordinator, and the planning coordinator reports back to the executive body and authorized body. The line ministries also can communicate directly with development of database system and development of maps, plans and reports. Similarly, states, line ministries, sectors and actors can also communicate the information all the way up to the executive. This figure shows the organizational setup and structure for preparation of urban and regional planning. Urban and regional planning process begins with identifying stakeholders, which is public, community, concerned stakeholders, key stakeholders, line ministries, then to assess potential and define resources, then develop option, formulate management plans, develop processing strategies, package maps, plans and descriptive devices, which is the reports, checking results, and approval of urban and regional planning. Physical presentation of planning development process. Location and integration plan can begin at the global level, to the regional level, to the country level, to the state level, to the county level, to Payam level, to Buma level, to the villages, all the way to the specific area of interest for development. In urban planning, it is important to think from a general to a specific to understand the relationship of places and to get clearer perspective of area location and integration. When thinking of developing a particular area, it is prudent to think holistically of the relationship and interrelationship with the neighboring areas. The move has to be from a general to a specific area in terms of integration of linkages. While identifying the area to be developed, there are some technical planning patterns for that area to be developed, such as linear, tree, radial, cellular, a star, and satellite. These technical planning patterns are important for urban planners to make the assessment and analysis of the area to be developed. There are several patterns of planning that can be adapted. However, each pattern of planning, either be grid, star, or cellular, should be adapted according to topography and site features of the area. There is no need for any area to apply one type of structure, whether grid, star, or linear alone. Terrain and society are interconnecting through the socio and physical infrastructure and public goods. To realize this scenario, the planning should respect the following: a balance with nature, a balance with tradition, appropriate technology, conviviality, which is composed of a place for individual, a place for friendship, a place for householders, a place for neighborhood, a place for communities, and a place for city domain, efficiency, human scale, opportunity matrix, regional integration, balanced movement, institutional integrity. One of the basic aims of urban regional planning is to link land and society through infrastructure. This can be done through ensuring balance with nature and tradition, efficient resource allocation and management, ensuring optimal population density per zone, anticipating future expansion and development opportunities. A proper urban-rural planning should pursue the SMART process, which is the specific, the measurable, the attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Accessibility in urban regional planning. Most urban expansion is usually horizontal and at the expense of the rural area. Unlike urban expansion, rural expansion is not fast, and where it's fast, it grows in a controlled manner. The opportunities in urban-rural linkages are: 1. Availability of potential agricultural land. 2. Relatively short distance from rural to rural area, and in some areas rural to urban. 3. All features of topography can be advantageous. 4. All urban centers can be considered as locational advantage. The strategy for urban-rural linkage. 1. Establishment of growth corridors, that is, ring roads connecting the counties to districts. 2. Establishment of access corridors connecting the various villages with the counties and towns further afield. 3. Establishing the core town as transport hub for strategic regional linkage for wider exchange. Promotion of multiple economic centers. The economy needs multiple economic centers established in both urban and rural areas to bring balanced development to both ends. The contemporary development tends to suggest concentration of economic activities in towns and low level of economic activities characterized by subsistence farming in the villages. The main opportunities for the promotion of multiple economic centers are: 1. Availability of raw materials for industrialization in arable land. 2. Existence of local, that is traditional technology and know-how. The strategy for promotion of multiple economic centers. 1. Promotion of tertiary sectors. At the regional level, there should be a trading center, industries, and wholesale market for regional exchange. 2. Promotion of commercial agriculture and value chain addition, value links, and complementary units in the village. 3. Provision of market facilities. Growth planning densification. Densification is the increasing number of people living in a given area. The minimal population density needed to benefit from the services and infrastructure delivery is 300 persons per hectare. The main opportunity for densification here is 1. Low density of existing settlement. The strategy for growth planning and densification. 1. Densification of existing settlement. 2. Setting up of built environment at human scale. 3. Provision of low-rise and high-density enterprise mixed-use zone. And 4. Setting up of urban and rural courts. Decentralized infrastructure. Facilities activate urban fabric within urbanized area while extending regular links to rural areas. Imbalance and poor quality infrastructure can have debilitating effects. These complications could be addressed by decentralizing infrastructure. The main opportunities for decentralizing infrastructure are 1. Potential rainfall. 2. Availability of local materials. 3. Availability of local technology and the know-how. 4. Commitment and willingness of the people. The strategy for decentralizing infrastructure. 1. Establishment of key resource sharing facilities like institutional node, that is government offices, in core town, educational node, that is higher education facilities, commercial node, that is wholesale market facilities. 2. Establishment of package of physical and social infrastructure. 3. Decentralized water harvesting at urban and rural level. 4. Decentralized sanitation programs at urban and rural level. And 5. Packaging solution that incorporate both housing improvement and economic activities. Chapter 6. Models. Urban integration. Models. The base map and comprehensive plan. Conceptual direction. Access. Urban-rural linkages. It is important that the process of identification, listing, and protection of historical buildings and sites are embarked on and in earnest. Historical sites should not be destroyed. They should be protected and preserved. Renovation and modification of some historical buildings, if necessary, should be done with aim of retaining the architectural designs and decors of the experts. Plaques could be erected in historical buildings for bringing former glory and to aid future memory. Sectors in integration. How sectors are integrating. Providing and facilitating site and services, integrating workplaces, designing finances and resources through vision and initiative, from providing resources to facilitating resources. This is to give the urban a value. Urban and rural integration. Regional integration is not just about urban and region or urban to urban or region to region integration, but also about rural to rural linkage. This integration can be realized by promoting complementary processing unit in the perimeter of rural areas. This resource-added strategy, which takes advantage of and promotes area based on specialization, contributes immensely to the enhancing of economy. It works by ensuring that the scaling and packaging and the local material of any local product that a place specializes in are processed within the area and resources or value added. In this context, the complementary processing unit should make sure that it is not in conflict with the rural area and should be understood by rural dwellers, and impact should not affect the socio-cultural and economic significance of the rural. The base map and comprehensive plan. Conceptual direction. Access to urban-rural linkages. In this figure, you have, for example, the city of Juba which has 4 main roads, one leading northward to Ural, southward to Nimule, eastward to Torit, and westward to Yambio. In addition to this figure, there are surrounding villages which needs to be connected either to the capital city Juba or to the neighboring towns like Ural, Yambio, Torit, and Nimule. And this is important for integration and development of urban-rural linkage. In order to do this, you need to develop growth corridor to connect the main town to the villages to the capital. Promotion of multiple economic centers. In this figure below, you can see as demonstrated that in the capital or core town, you have promotion of tertiary sector such as trading, wholesale market, smaller scale entrepreneurial industries. While at the rural areas or the villages, you have the promotion of commercial agriculture and complementing processing units, which is scattered throughout all the villages or all the surrounding rural areas. The promotion of multiple economic center in this essence is to take services to the people at the rural level and make the people in the urban benefit from the resources of the rural. Growth planning densification. In this figure, we can also see that in the urban center or the core town, you have densification of town city centers, ensuring imageability by urban court, developing projects like institutional node, educational node, recreational node, and commercial node. While on the outskirts or outside in the villages at the rural level, you have development as far as possible on low potential land and close to existing villages. And this is shared throughout the rural areas across the country. Facilities in decentralized infrastructure. Also in the diagram or in the figure below, you have the capital or the core town, which is Juba, which has the establishment of an institutional, an educational, recreational, and commercial node, key facilities like wholesales, market, college, key public functions. While at the rural areas which are surrounding villages, you have package of secondary schools, health stations, market, and physical infrastructures. This is also scattered and evenly distributed across the villages across the country. Urban integration. In this figure, the diagram portrays here that urban integration leads to more urban centers, which gives rise to socio-economic, cultural, environmental, and territorial integration. The integration in this essence, which begins at the urban, which connects the core town to its outskirts or residential areas, also to the neighboring towns and villages, and to the larger country, with an aim of interconnecting the whole country to share resources and facilities in an equal and even manner. More urban centers are created through magical triangle to integrate the neighboring areas from urban to rural, from towns to neighboring villages. The urban-regional integration should not only be between a specified urban and rural, but should be throughout the country to integrate and interconnect the country with itself. So it gives you the urban, city, town, rural, and regional integration. Conclusion. This study set out to highlight the key challenges associated with the urban, rural, and regional development. This includes identifying the key stakeholders, recommending areas of collaboration among them, and promotion of an alternative planning agenda rooted in integrated planning approach and methods. Within urbanization context, the impact of balancing urban demands and supply process have been largely negative, As a result, in most developing countries, urban areas have not been able to handle their own programs by themselves. This burden, which has been duplicated over and over in a number of countries, has likely been put upon the shoulders of the rural in particular and in the country in general. To offset this, a well-coordinated approach is needed to realize the main planning principles, planning, perspective, and aspects. This study argues that phenomena of uncontrolled and unregulated or poorly regulated expansion of urban into rural, which infringe on agricultural land for housing and other purposes, generates tremendous pressure, if not conflict between the rural and the urban. These same conditions, the study further argues, give rise to condition of sprawl, which in turn have untold social, economic, cultural, environmental, and territorial consequences. Therefore, to embark on a strategic urban and rural planning and expansion, neither rural nor the effect of the urban on the rural can be ignored any longer. An integrated and multidisciplinary approach is called for. For any urban and regional planning preparation process, rural dwellers and stakeholders need to be consulted side by side with urban dwellers and stakeholders. The same application should apply during implementation process. All the mistakes that are happening is because people are not following the logical sequence of God. Underestimation of land and ignorance and lack of attention to what land requires, which is huge demand of infrastructure. Lack of clear awareness on essence of urban and regional planning, which is wrong attitude of linking directly only with engineering. Alemseghed Ghebrekidan is an assistant professor of urban planning, University of Juba, South Sudan. As he laments the current imbalance in rural-urban planning trends, which he believes is unfairly skewed in favor of the urban, Alemseghed Ghebrekidan argues for a symbolic relationship between the two, where the rural benefits from the presence of the strong urban area. This booklet, born out of many years of university teaching and practical experiences in Eritrea, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, blames uncontrolled or poorly regulated encroachment of the urban into the rural, which infringes on the agricultural land for housing and other purposes as the main cause of urban sprawl and cancer of the city. The booklet concludes that in order to embark on a strategic urban planning and expansion, neither the rural nor the effect of the urban on the rural can be ignored any longer. An integrated and multidisciplinary approach is called for. That is why this book, which is about multidisciplinary integration and stakeholders coordination, is a must-read for not only urban planning experts, other disciplines or policy makers, but the ordinary citizens who care about the built environment he or she occupies. I suggest that for true achievement of urban regional planning and development, there should be a strong and independent institution with inclusive curriculum established at the government level. Dedication to the people and government of Eritrea and South Sudan for inspiring me to look for homemade solutions to our developmental challenges and for instilling in me the unquenchable desire for expanding my professional aspirations. My thanks also goes to my parents, my beloved late mother, Mrs. Ishebeba Awolem, and my dear late father, Ghebrekidan Ghebrekirgis, for shaping me to be the person I am today. I especially wish to thank my mother, Ishebeba Awolem, for her strong and unwavering vision that she instilled in me from the tender age, the spirit of self-reliance. Let the Almighty God be with us.